Hey there, Lisa. How are you?
I am great, Bobby. How are you?
Good. Chuck, I see you're on as well.
Hey, Bobby.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, no, I guess it's still sort of morning, maybe almost afternoon for you.
In one more minute, it will be afternoon.
In
yes.
one more minute. Well, hey, welcome to our call. We don't do this a lot, but sometimes we decide to have an esteemed guest on our phone call here, and I see your colleague joined as well. So for the rest of the team, we end up having 30, sometimes as many as 50 people from across the company on this call, and we typically go through internal workings of our forecasts and other various aspects of what we're doing. But this week, I wanted to take a little bit of a brief pause for the rest of the team on the call here and have our friends at ECAP on the call. They're doing some really cool stuff, especially at some of, accounts like, Redstone Federal Credit Union, which, by the way, used to be a bank of mine for 3 years once upon a time when I lived in, believe it or not, Huntsville, Alabama. And so know right where you're going with that one. And I think it's really interesting because we just came off another call. And one of the things that, depending on your aim, right, is the mid-market accounts for us, accounts that don't have the 30-year legacy BI platforms to deal with, tend to be able to move faster. Whether it's a Duluth Trading, whether it's a Redstone Federal Credit Union, they can move faster. By the way, does anybody know how many regional mid-sized banks there are in the country? There's a lot. There are a couple hundred really decent sized ones that would meet Redstone Federal Credit Union's sort of criteria. That's something a marketing person does, right? That's a marketeer's job. You look at the total available market, you look at the market segment, size of the companies, those kinds of things, and then you sort of purpose your aim at those. So perfect timing for this call because those are the kinds of things that we're talking about on some of the executive calls. And with that, maybe Lisa, I'll turn it over to you to introduce your team and talk to us here this morning. You guys got 30 minutes, and we appreciate you being here this morning.
Thank you, Bobby, and happy Monday to everyone on the call. Hope everyone is starting the week well. We're pleased to be here today to present to you, as we like to name it in eCapital's world. It's a different name every day. We're very excited to share with you what we term as our whiz kids in data science and how data science within Corda brings tremendous value to our customers. And I'm pleased to be on this Corda growth journey at eCapital, partnered with Chuck Swiger and Ryan Kohler, who lead the delivery side of our analytics practice. They are the band behind our success, and they do a great job of training our technical team and partnering with our customers. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Kohler to introduce our presentation.
Great, thanks Lisa, and thanks Bobby for having us on today. Really excited to present this kind of case study on Redstone Federal Credit Union. So I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation here real quick. Alrighty. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
Yep. Good.
Perfect. So Bobby, again, I really appreciate it. We will try to fly through some of the content here and leave plenty of time for a Q&A. Just jumping into things right away, kind of our plan for today, right? Just to give you a quick agenda here. As I mentioned, we'll give you a little bit of history on Redstone, kind of how the relationship was formed, talk very briefly about phase one, and then get into the fun stuff around phase two. I think that's what everyone's kind of attending the call here for today. Really kind of hear about some of the specific use cases that we've delivered at Redstone, and then talk about kind of some of the next steps as we see it to help kind of package this up in just kind of a storytelling mode to help attract, new buyers for Corda. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the relationship origin here. So kind of a unique situation. So Cornerstone Advisors, both in Corda and eCapital, had kind of a mutual relationship with. And they work with a lot of small to mid-sized banks across the country and really have kind of packaged banking solutions. They came across an RFP that was kind of an interesting one that we've had some success with, right? Kind of that typical data warehouse approach and kind of going against the grain a little bit there to recommend something a little bit more modern like Corda. So eCapital and Corda kind of put our heads together and kind of co-delivered this RFP to Redstone Federal Credit Union. And the team down below is kind of the critical players in that RFP process. I think special shout out to both, Mike Nader and Chuck Schweiger for making the trip down to Huntsville, Alabama, and really kind of providing the two-prong approach of technical expertise, of course, but also kind of that financial services expertise as it relates to the industry. I think that was kind of the difference maker, right? Having a vendor, partner firm relationship going directly at the customer like that really kind of saw us a lot of cohesion across the board there, which was really fun to see. So then when we got into, kind of phase one, typical of a lot of the banking solutions out there, they were a big Fiserv DNA shop. We had, Meridian Link from some of their loan application information, as well as Workday and some other mixture of kind of vendor and on-premise systems. This was really your typical Encorda kind of phase one project though, right? Identifying data sources, bringing them into the platform very quickly, and then most importantly, being able to show actionable insights for the business there. That was just phase one though, right? And that's where I think I'll pass it on here to Max Carduner, who's kind of our lead data scientist at eCapital, who also is an Encorda engineer, and he'll kind of get into the fun stuff here, talking a little bit about kind of what the catalyst of that phase two was. So Max, if you want to just give a quick introduction for yourself and then kind of move on with the presentation, that'd be awesome.
Sure, thanks, Brian. Yeah, so my name is Max. I started with eCapital a little bit over a year and a half ago. My background is in finance and then management consulting, strategic management consulting, and then I realized that I wanted to be a data scientist, so I went back to school to pursue my master's degree in data science. And as I was wrapping that up, that's kind of when Ryan and I met, and he told me about the software they were working with in Encorda that had, a great UI and was built on the Spark data frame with Python. So, when he told me that, I knew that this was a really cool software that allowed me to not only be a good data scientist, but operationalize solutions for the company and automate that so that the company can reap value without me being present. So that was my biggest sell point for me. And also for Redstone. So the main catalyst here was when there was that partnership between Encorda and eCapital. They were really sold on the Python and the data science solutions that were capable within Encorda. However, they didn't really know exactly what that meant or had a lot of expertise on site to implement on their own. So what we did preliminarily was have our eCapital Fast Start program, which identified 10 plus areas and specific projects that Redstone had identified as areas they wanted data science solutions. And this, to their credit, they realized that, they actually had a lot of interest in this, but didn't have a lot of executive leadership in the area. So they actually went out and got a guy from Capital One that hired him as the senior assistant VP of data science analytics. His name is Raj. He's been a tremendous partner for us. So this is kind of what kick-started us. And then we prioritized kind of with Raj, what were the, in terms of ROI and achievable ROI and quick wins, what were some of the best use cases to start off with. So yeah, Brian, you want to go to the next slide? So before we jump into kind of the use cases, what we had to do was create a data science experience and ecosystem for them so that, we could create and brainstorm and create different models for different solutions. So just to kind of walk you through that, and one thing here is, Encorda is great at the end result and putting the productionalized model in practice. And so what we wanted to do was supplement that with some open source tools that allowed us to better experiment with different machine learning models and get to that right solution. So what we did is we stood up something called Jupyter Hub, which if you're not familiar with is essentially a software that allows concurrent data scientists to work together and on the same machine, but with their own individual notebook servers with some guardrails on memory and that kind of thing so they don't take down the whole server or anything. And what we did was with this server is we set up access to the Parquet from Encorda so you could get all the data from Encorda, as well as configured virtual environments for Python and implemented the same PySpark that comes with the Encorta platform, so that it was easy transitioning any code developed in this environment to Encorta. So there's kind of these three big steps that we have to do in development and production, but they differ a little bit. So data wrangling, model development, model evaluation. So for data wrangling, what we like to coach up our users on and potential data scientists is thinking of the cells within a notebook as materialized views, so they're easy just to copy and paste and throw them into Encorta when you need them, or if you prove that you need them. And within data wrangling, you have to do things like assembling all the variables that you have at the time of prediction that you're trying to predict, and also crafting that target variable that aligns with business objective. So that's kind of the main pieces there. And then as we go into model development, here we're not only experimenting with different types of models, but different features and different subsets of features to see, what is kind of that best combination of features to get the most predictive performance for the models. And that's great, because that'll help us in the end figure out what we want to actually productionalize in Encorta. And then most importantly is evaluating that model against the business objectives that we were assigned to, and trying to translate the model results into a net savings figure, ideally, by understanding kind of what that baseline is for the business and what the incremental performance of the model does for that. And then, because we tried a bunch of different models, different subsets of features, we're going to pick the optimal model based on those metrics that we created. So once we're done with that in development, then we're ready for Encorta. And what we found is kind of the best practice to do that is to create kind of data schemas that are locked down from the rest of the business, that only have the data we need for the machine learning pipeline, so they can't be touched or messed with by anyone else. Then we have to do some similar data wrangling, but because we've already kind of done that in Jupyter, thinking about the cells as materialized views for the data, it's pretty easy just to grab that and throw them into materialized views. And just a spotlight there, we're onboarding a data scientist that we helped interview and train. And when he found out like how easy it was to take, all this pre-processing work that we've done in Jupyter and throw it in Encorta, he was like, "Oh my God, Max, I can't believe this is so easy. You have no idea how hard this was at my last job, where I had to do these crazy Spark pipelines and never could really understand what was going on in the background." But this has become a really transparent way of data wrangling for him, which was great. And then, then we do model training. And what we've found is setting up a separate schema for that, to have on a different periodic basis. You can retrain the models, kind of save out the model files, and then monitor the dashboards, or create dashboards to monitor the model performance over time, and make sure that there's no drift there. And then understanding kind of the most important features is a cool dashboard that we can put together for the business to kind of learn, with the model over time. And that periodic retraining process just kind of depends on the business, what makes most sense for them. So, you can do it daily, you can do it, however often you schedule a schema, or you can do it monthly, and it just kind of depends on the situation, what makes most sense there. And then with that trained model, we also are going to want to score our records as they come into Encorta for, use cases. So we're going to talk about credit card accounts. So, for example, if a new account that was opened yesterday, we have a model ready to, apply to score that record to see what the relative risk is for the business to then do appropriate actions on. So that's kind of the overview. So now let's do the more fun part and jump into the use cases. So use case one. So this was the main thing we identified that had the most opportunity of savings, was reducing the number of credit card charge-offs. So charge-off just means an account that's not paying you back for either fraud or just they stopped making payments, period. And so then Redstone has to write that off in the books, and that's recognized as a loss. So the main catalyst here, though, was that Redstone partnered with a retailer called Rural King, which is kind of like a lower end Cabela's and Walmart kind of in one. And they offered a store branded credit card to them, but this member base is a little bit more risky than their traditional members, and their charge-off rate is really high. comparatively to the industry and their base membership. So what they needed was, they need to be able to identify credit card accounts that are likely to be fraudulent or charge off in the near future in order to do something about their credit lines or, have some sort of preventative action. So the requirement that was given to us was, can you create a model that identifies which accounts are most likely to charge off due to fraud or non-payment? And how early can we identify that in a credit card's account's life? Because the earlier identify, the more line is going to be available that you can turn off for that member, for that account. So what we did was we designed and developed in Jupiter Hub kind of with that process I just explained, operationalized it within Incorda. So what it does is identifies accounts early in the life cycle. So like within the first couple of weeks to a month, where we've created a set of models that will identify if this is very likely to be fraud or charge off. And what we realized in terms of net savings was about $900,000. But to put an asterisk on that is that, this is what we identify would be potential net savings based on if they had this model in from the very beginning, when this program started last fall. So, I think the bottom line here is more like, we can save the business hundreds of thousands of dollars by using some sort of predictive analytics here. And I think that's kind of more the message than just trying to get, zone in on just that one number of 900,000. So then I'm going to pass it off. So we also had another use case around credit card inactivity because half of all accounts are inactive. And my colleague Juan will explain that.
Hey Max, I wish half my credit cards were inactive, but they seem to keep piling up bills. This is really, really interesting. I hope, by the way, we're up to almost 60 participants across our company on this call today. So I think this is super interesting. My marketing team's listening. I'd like to, see us, hit about 500 of the mid-sized banks across, maybe the globe, but certainly the U.S. And I'd like to move all those leads right in the hands of you, Max, and the team at ECAP.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. Hey, and Bobby, do we want to pause for a second maybe and just see if there's any questions, specifically to this use case and some of what Max has covered already?
Yeah, great idea.
Okay. Yeah, so if there's any questions, feel free to ask now. I'm happy to help.
Hey, Ryan, this is Pat.
Hey, Pat.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, good to see you. I do have my Incorda vest on today, so that was for you.
And I appreciate that, and I will see you too. By the way, nice COVID do. That is a new look for you, and I like it.
I'm kind of going with the hockey hair here, right?
Yeah,
it makes him look like it's like 10 years younger. Like he's just
I thought it was a cap or a toque or something up there in the Great White North you were wearing. And it's your hair? That's even more impressive.
He's got a beaver up there. He's keeping
That's
us in
right.
warm. So curious, have you guys built any of this into any demo paths or part of whether it's financial services or others? Use case in the demo. I could see this as being in this.
Yeah, so that is kind of some of our next steps. Some of the operationalized models, like Max has said, it just kind of really hit the ground running and kind of gone live over the last few months. So I think what our next steps are, we have a few next steps, but part of it is trying to package together some sort of demo, around this type of information that we can leverage in sales cycles to better kind of showcase that experience that you could live in Incorda. I think the other part of that too is, Chuck has a really good relationship with Raj at Redstone, and we are working with Raj to try to make him available for some thought leadership type discussions, and hopefully can kind of leverage this Redstone name a little bit more publicly as we move forward.
Pat, like I had hosted a virtual roundtable, and I had a credit union in attendance, and so basically the strategy I'm using is like, hey, I can be your matchmaker. I'm going to connect our client case to what you're describing because it's the same pain. And so, and he actually even reached out after that roundtable to say, would I even consider just presenting to financial services and just do a financial services roundtable? So I think we could share this story again, but I'm trying a new approach of like saying, hey, let me be the matchmaker. We're doing this with another credit union. And, and I'm really doing that connection point at that level. So I think we got a lot of opportunity here.
Perfect. And then that follows on with, and you may have said this at the very beginning, and I apologize if I missed it, but was this an initiative that they were looking to solution for? Was this something that kind of organically grew out of the art of the possible, and now seeing that, okay, well, this transactional reporting solution that we just brought in inherently ships with Spark, and now maybe there's a little bit more to the story than we had initially thought. And again,
Yes.
I apologize if I missed that.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was kind of one of those things, right, where like a lot of companies, right, they hear the term data science, or they hear, the verbiage of machine learning, and everyone, it's kind of a fancy buzzword, right? People are really motivated by, trying to create an environment that will promote that. But I don't think they really had a good sense of what that really meant, right? And so what Chuck and Max did, right, was they actually led, a full-on kind of data science evaluation process with Redstone. They got in front of the key business stakeholders, right, helped understand critical pain points, what type of ROI were they looking for? And that's where, with eCapital's help, we were able to take a list of, 30 potential use cases, kind of whittle that down to 10, right? And then give them a good opportunity then to kind of prioritize the 10 heaviest use cases. And that's where we were able to scope out that work for them very quickly. So that was kind of what the experience looked like, Pat, if that, kind of helps paint the picture a little bit more.
Nah, it's perfect. That's exactly like we like to upsell, just being able to have that art of the possible go on.
And
Absolutely.
And to that note, I think, Pat, this is where the differentiator to go on the offense, because the enterprise accounts are spending millions of dollars with data science initiatives, but they could do it simpler and cleaner within Corda. And it's like, and not have the millions and the timeline involved in it. And I think that's what I think the wow is like going on the offense, that this actually simplifies it. It enables a faster data science outcome because I have Corda with it.
Yeah, and I guess the last question, maybe you guys are going to get to this. How long did it take to enable this use case? What was soup to nuts?
So I'll let Max answer
Yeah.
that one. I know, a little bit of back and forth, but, I think difference between the initial development versus kind of the optimization around it too. So I don't know, Max, if you want to maybe speak to that quick.
Yeah, sure. So the original scope was more to build data science practice and to do things in a methodology, in a clean way that's easy to reproduce, right? But they knew they wanted to go after Rural King. The problem was we started with them last November, and that was also when Rural King started. So we needed about 6 months of data to start to work with for this. So since we've had this data, it took 3 months, probably two months. It really depends kind of on the use case. But what is cool is once we've developed kind of this credit card domain expertise, we're able to spin up new models and new targets really quickly. So I was able, for example, for Juan, he came in, he's going to talk about his use case and activity in a second, but a lot of the X variables are the same here for both use cases. So we already have all this development going in, and he is able to spin up a new model in, a month or two, right? It really just depends though more on once we get to once you identify a model you like, right, that meets your objectives, then you can implement it, right? And also having the harder part is not necessarily building the model and getting a functioning model. The harder part is aligning that model with the business, right, and something that they'll actually use, and going through those steps in the right and appropriate way. So I would say that, so we had a model up and running within a month, right? Like we developed our first model in a month at Rural King, but we realized that, this model didn't, make sense for this first iteration, but it's getting picked back up now by their data scientists that they just hired. So they're picking it up and they're about to use it, because it was more of looking at their entire credit card portfolio of riskiness. So essentially what happens with a good iteration is that you'll have, you just basically iterate, you keep iterating, and you fail fast, and you want to fail faster and faster and faster, so you get to something that makes sense. And initially I was the only data scientist, so my time was constrained, and they were trying to prioritize my time to make sure we were getting the most out of it. So I guess that's a really long answer for the fact that if you have a clearly identified use case and project, right, I would say it takes about 2 or 3 months. But to really set up the organization for continued success, this is a longer term project, like a 6-month project, right? Something like that. And it really kind of depends on where the company is to start with.
How has this impacted their loan loss provisioning?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, has it had an impact on their loan loss provisioning, given their relationship with Rural King and the issuing of the card? Did they do any new loan loss provisioning as a result of that?
I can answer that, Max.
So,
do you want me to take? Do you want me to take it, Max?
Sure.
Yeah. Only because I've been talking. This is Chuck. I've been talking to Raj about this a lot. So they believe it's going to have a big impact. But right now they've been presenting, especially Raj has been presenting to the actual business users the outcomes, what Max has been producing and the whole team has been producing, and he's been getting feedback on changes that need to be made, different ways of looking at it, different features that need to be put into the models, and that feedback is really kind of focused on loan loss provisioning. It's really focused on that, and I think that he believes that it's going to have a big impact by the end of the year.
And
just to kind of add on to that.
Go ahead.
Oh,
go ahead,
I
Max.
was going to add on to this. This Rural King partnership with them, they basically decided that the next year, starting in March, is when they're actually going to evaluate the partnership. It was about like a 3-year deal with them. And so they've kind of realized they've learned a bunch of things throughout this time. We now know there's some models that will decrease costs, right, for them. So we're gearing up so that whenever we're officially kind of going live on the evaluation of the partnership in March for a year, that we're ready to go. We have all these models. We're targeting the right people early. And that's kind of how it's going so far, because this is mostly a right after approval model, although we also want to do just a strictly application-based model as well. So I think that'll probably help more in the underwriting process as well. And then I think we don't have a ton of time, so I'd like to pass it on to Juan to talk about this use case, the second use case.
Sure, thanks, Maxwell. Hi, everyone. My name is Juan Malaver. I've been at eCapital and collaborating with Redstone for around 3 months now, and I focused most of my efforts on building a model that looked at customer behavior, focused on their payments. In the credit card world, there are 4 mutually exclusive groups by which you can separate customers depending on whether they have transacted, whether they have paid interest on each cycle. So, a transactor means that they're both using the card, settling that balance every month. Revolvers are people that are carrying that balance month to month, and actives are people that are not using the card at all, and paydowns are people that are just eliminating accrued balance. So the main challenge for Redstone is focused on inactivity, and that's because 50% of the Rural King cards are inactive, and which is a pretty high percentage. And Redstone wants to target those accounts and hopefully incentivize some activity for those customers. So the plan is to, identify early on, and early on I mean first 60 days, which accounts are most likely to be inactive. So with this model, you're able to get those probabilities for each of these categories. But it's essentially sort of a customer churn and a machine learning model. And what the marketing team at Redstone can do is, target specific promotions, those accounts that have higher probabilities of being inactive, whether that be some rewards program or incentivizing spending on subscriptions or any sort of, transactions that might make the cards more sticky and keep the customers using the card. So by, leveraging that, developing the machine learning model in Jupyter and then implementing that in Encorda, the team at Redstone, the marketing team at Redstone, is able to, get these probabilities of what the model thinks an account is going to fall into, what category account is going to fall into, and then segment customers accordingly. So the priorities, of course, are those accounts that have, for inactivity, they're going to be anything greater than 70 or 80% are the first priorities. And then, the marketing team can assign the specific strategies to incentivize more activity for those accounts.
Yeah, and a big thing here is that a lot of this portfolio of customers aren't online, or so they prefer physical mail. And so rather than mailing out 100 to 100% of the population, the like physical mail that's expensive to incentivize them to use the card, they can instead, I think the exact something around, we can identify 80% of the inactive accounts by only targeting like 60% of the population, right? So it's taking that huge bucket and decreasing it so that they can have more ROI on their marketing spend.
When they initiated this, they had with the relationship with Rural King a year ago, 50% of the cards are inactive. Do you know why 50% of the cards are inactive?
Yeah, so I mean, if you think about the relationship, it's been and they have a series of ideas of why it's inactive, but basically since they started, 50% are inactive. But so Rural King is like they sell tractors and like these big pieces of equipment too, right? So a lot of times it's people getting the card to finance that big purchase, and then maybe not really using the card after that. And then also the card is branded with like Rural King all over it, so it doesn't really so it makes you think that it's only usable at Rural King. When actually, Redstone makes more money when they spend it outside of Rural King. So there's a little bit of a branding problem, and they've kind of identified that as well.
Yeah, I mean, back to our days even of working with like Cabela's, Max, this would have been fantastic. I mean, they really have, it's going to be tied to the marketing team also having the loyalty program that can identify, because that's how they get the value. I mean, that's how, like, my dad uses his Cabela's credit card all the time because he can't wait to win points for his loyalty program. So I think that it's tying the marketing with the loyalty, but man, there's huge opportunity because even our retailers that have private label credit card, this is a huge opportunity for the same.
Well, that's exactly where I was headed, Lisa. Is that the shift here, right? Do they not have a program that's underlying this for the activity that rewards the user, right? Rather than simply just the financing aspect.
Yep.
Right.
And I see
and they have a rewards program.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Max.
Sorry.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, I was going to say they have a rewards program, but it's only for like one of the cards, and it mostly encourages you to spend in the store, which is good for Rural King, bad for Redstone.
Yeah, I know we have a lot of questions here in the chat window. I think a lot of them are a lot technical in nature. I think one of the things that we were working with Tammy on was to try to set up some sort of cadence, with the engineering team, with the product team, to talk about, some of our experiences with setting up a data science kind of best in practice ecosystem, while still leveraging the power of Encorta. So we'd love to share some of that with you. And I think it'd be a great spot, to kind of go back and forth and share some of the ideas to just, make Encorta be a better product, as a whole. So definitely looking forward to that. I know we do have, just one more slide maybe to go through just real quick. I won't even hit on this too much, Max, because I think we've kind of touched on it, but just to talk about, next steps here quick. I think that's, one of the pieces we wanted to talk about just a little bit here, right? So I think we've already kind of talked about leveraging this Redstone story for other financial services targeted accounts, creating some sort of campaign around that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the other thing that we're trying to really get our point across on is I think we're just scratching the surface here, right? I think we continue to build up, our data science team at eCapital with people that are, unbelievable like Max and Juan here. And I think as we continue to do that, we're going to also identify use cases across all verticals, right? So we're bringing the same type of mentality, to all of our client base today that is already leveraging Encorta for all your data engineering needs. And we see a real potential for expanding the use cases for Encorta if we can get that mentality of data science and machine learning with these organizations moving. And then the last one that we did kind of just touch on a little bit was partnering with Raj, at Redstone, for speaking engagements and some of that storytelling process, because I think he's a huge advocate, for not only data science, but for Encorta. I think would be an awesome addition to kind of the Encorta family to kind of help tell our story here. So Bobby, want to be really respectful of the time here, obviously, but if there's any other questions or any other discussion points, I think now's a great time for it.
I just wanted to touch on one thing, Ryan. So Ryan and I hosted a small group happy hour live last week on Tuesday night. And that live happy hour, we had Smith's Medical as our there to be verbalizing with our other executives that we invited the value of Encorta and how it's the wow to the organization. And just that accounts receivable conversation on the fact that all general ledger systems are set up so hardwired that you can only see 0 to 30 days past due, 30 to 60. He now can daily see 1 to 7, 7 to 15. He can now pay. He can also affect how he's the payment date on the AP side. That again, Ryan, your data science team at Smiths Medical partnership that you have, you're going to be able to take that a whole nother level of data. I think it's also going to just really demystify data science to our business executives.
Yeah, and one last point, Chuck.
Exactly.
Sorry, Ryan. I was just going to say one last point on Raj doing speaking engagements. We're setting up a call this week, so everybody should know, between Osama and Tara and Raj to talk specifically about being on panel discussions, webinars. Hopefully that conversation will go well. As you can imagine, Redstone is very sensitive about this data because it's very sensitive data. It's not only company sensitive, but it's personally sensitive because they're looking at people that have credit cards. So, but I think I'm sure that conversation will go well and it'll lead us towards being able to use Raj in more marketing type efforts.
Yeah, and the last thing I guess I'll just share real quick is I can share this PowerPoint presentation, with all the folks at Encorta, at least for some use cases to go back on. The only ask at this time until we can get kind of the legal approval for Redstone would be just to kind of use it for internal use or reference a large credit union in the Southeast or something like that. But I think it can be powerful messages and kind of help with the sales cycle. And with that, obviously, Chuck, myself, Lisa, and the team here, we're always helpful, always willing to be helpful in the sales cycles where needed as well. So feel free to reach out to us for any questions, at any point in time.
Awesome. Ryan, this is fantastic.
Guys.
Max, the team here, really, really appreciate it. And, to me, this is all about, kind of aim and purpose. And I think if we just put a little bit of energy into, tackling, the hundreds of mid-sized market banks that are out there, even if only a handful wanted to engage, we've got some really interesting use cases here to put in front of all of them. So job well done. Thank you, ECAP, and thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby.
Thank
you for the time.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. Look forward to it. Bye.
Okay.